Hello everyone, Drad here. Today's adventure is sausage and shrimp gumbo. This one's a little bit of a labor of love. It takes quite a bit of time to do it right, but if you do take the time, effort, patience, definitely worth it. Alright, so to get started, the first thing we're going to want to do is kind of look at what all's involved here. So the first step is browning our meats. In this case, we're going to use some butcher-made andouille sausage and then some ground sausage as well. And so this is about 2 pounds of sausage, because I want all the fat from that to make the roux. I'm going to super slow cook a roux until we get very, very dark, thick roux. That's the base for any good gumbo. So gumbo is really kind of the breeding ground between soup and stew, with a little influence, and it's all about the roux. So we're going to take our time, make sure we get that right. Then we're going to use a lot of aromatics. So normally the traditional method would be, instead of carrots, you use celery. Didn't have any celery. I'm actually quite fine with the French version of the Holy Trinity, which replaces celery with carrots. That's a reasonable substitution, I think, in this. Otherwise, we're still going to have our bell peppers, onions, carrots, and then I've got some fresh parsley, garlic from the tubes, again, a little chili paste, green onions, a little chicken broth, Worcestershire sauce, and then a few seasonings, and we'll kind of throw it all together, add a little heat, doing the slow cooking part. If you'd make a roux the traditionally correct way, it takes 30 to 40 minutes or so to make just the roux part, and then cooking the vegetables is like 10 minutes, and then you simmer for almost an hour, and then at the end you'll put in the shrimp. So you want to save that bit for last. So let's kind of get started. Let's jump into it. Alright, first things first, I'm going to get some heat in a skillet, and then I'm going to get a little regular vegetable oil, because it's going to have the higher smoke point out of the oils that I have on hand. And I'm going to look at starting with these little andouille sausages. So what I'll do, there's a couple of different methods here. I think what I like to do best is start by just getting them seared first, so they can get a solid shape without much worry, and then I'll come back, slice them into rounds, and then I'll go back and brown them the rest of the way. And then after that, I'll do my ground sausage, and then we're going to take all the lovely fat from all of that, mix it with a little oil, and then start making our roux with the flour, slow cooking it. Alright, I got the sausage on. I'm waiting for it to kind of brown a little bit on each side. I'm going to give it a minute or two on each side, just to try to get that crust so that it retains its shape. In the meantime, I'm going to start cutting up some vegetables. So I'll start with some onion. Alright, let's go ahead and speed this up a little bit. While we do that, I'm going to go ahead and play the background recorded sizzling of the sausage, because let's be honest, that's why we're here anyway, right? Okay, we're back now with the sausage. These are nowhere near done cooking, but I just wanted to get a little brown on the outside so they'll hold their shape when I go to cut them into little rounds. How about some more of that little obligatory sausage sizzle? You can hear that going pretty crazy. I'll toss those around a good little bit down the road so they're all nice and brown. Alright, cleaned up the board a little bit. Back to cutting up some vegetables while that sausage cooks. It doesn't take long now that there's a lot more surface area exposed to the pan. But I do want it to actually be done and nice and brown. Alright, I think my sausage rounds are done now. And put them in this bowl I set aside till the end. These won't go back in until we're almost done cooking, actually. Alright. Sausage rounds out. Just a little bowl of them. That's why I went ahead and did this ground sausage too. I want to make sure that it's a pretty hearty gumbo. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of flattening. Let me get you a little view. So I'm just flattening this ground sausage across the bottom of the pan, so we get as much surface area as possible. I've turned the heat down considerably. I'm below medium at the moment, medium-low. Just want to slowly brown this while I finish cutting up the vegetables. In fact, actually, I'll just go and put it on medium. Let that start to brown. Put the splatter guard on here. And then after it starts to brown a little bit, we can break it up. Next, I'm going to do the green onions and parsley. Now, I do want to keep these separate from the other vegetables because they're going to go in later, but might as well chop them now while I got them. A lot of this black. These green little end bits are a little dried out. Go ahead and get rid of some of that. And then I'll just put this in its own little container here. So that was 2 little bundles of green onions. That's about what I want. And I got 1 bundle of parsley. I keep most of the stems. But as you can see, some of this is starting to be a little bit wilty, especially here on the bottom. So these stems are kind of dried. They're going to be a little too tough a texture. So I'm going to take this part off. Now, most of the time, if this is really fresh, I'd probably even keep all of this to chop up too. But it's not. So I'm just going to take this bit of the bundle. Give it a rough go through once over. Okay. And then run my knife through it a few times. It doesn't have to be ground into paste or anything, but I do want a reasonable fine chop on these things. Mix those with the green onions because those will go together. Alright, next thing is we just wait for the sausage to be done, and then we start the roux process. Alright, one side of that big flat piece of sausage is done, and you can see it's all nice and brown and crusty. I just flipped it over as one piece. That wasn't really my original intention, but this actually works out just fine. I'll just cook it on the other side, get a brown crust on over, and then I'll bring it to the cutting board, chop it all up into some bits, and then store it for later as well. Alright, so we got our big slab of cooked sausage over here. Turn the heat off, for now anyway. And then just start kind of rough chopping this up into bits. Alright, to get the roux started, I'm going to take all these drippings from this pan, from the sausage that we just cooked, which is not nearly as much as I'm going to need. I actually hope for a little more. Get some of those little crusty bits, because that stuff's really tasty. I'm going to shoot for about 3/4 of a cup of fat. So I'm significantly far from that. So I'm going to dig into my trusty bacon and sausage grease container. Try to add a little bit. I don't want all of this just to be sausage and bacon grease. I want some of it to be high smoke point fat too. So kind of reasonably pack down what I've got here just so I can see really how much that is. If I have to, I can melt it a little. No, I think that's going to do just fine. And I've just got my straight vegetable oil. I'm going to fill this up to about 3/4 of a cup. Alright, let's move back over here to looking at the skillet. Now I was kind of debating on whether I wanted to go ahead and just do everything straight up in my big stock pot and just go from there, but I think for the roux cooking process, get a little better heat control and don't have to dig so far down, plus you can see it a little bit better if I just do the roux part here. So I'm going to get the heat. So what I do is I start on real high heat, but I can't be on high heat for long or we'll burn. So I'll start by getting all of this stuff melted. And while that is melting, I'm going to take my all-purpose flour off to the side and measure out 1.5 cups. So I just keep one of these half-cup plastic measuring cups in my flour because I use multiples of half cups for everything. Bacon biscuits, try to make it for roux, whatever. Everything you use flour for, it's usually in half cup. So get that going out of the way. Alright, now that we're coming up to temp, I'm going to go ahead and lower this heat down to not quite to medium, but real close. Spread out all this flour. and then mix, and then mix, and move, move, move. Keep it moving. You want all the liquids, fats to mix. I don't want any clumps in what's going on here. I may add a little more fat to this. This not quite where I want it. Yeah, just a tiny bit too much flour. There we go. I want it to look like a really thick batter. It was still like clinging together like crumbs. That tells me I didn't have enough fat in it. So now I've got this super thick batter. This is more like what I want it. Alright, bring the temp back up to medium high, like a solid medium high at this point. And when I stop whisking, I gotta get back to, I can't do that for very long. I gotta get back. Whisk, whisk, whisk. This is the quick roux making process, and it still takes a good bit of time. So I'm gonna keep the high heat on all the way until I get to something that's the color of peanut butter. And once I'm at peanut butter, then I'm gonna turn the temperature down, like right now as we're going through it, like way down, low, way, medium, low. And then stir, 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 whisk, whisk, whisk for this whole time. As you can see, kind of on the little clock on the stove, we're looking at 10 minutes in of just doing this slow whisking over and over again. And then we're going to keep doing it for a few more minutes with this low, low heat until we get from peanut butter all the way to really dark chocolatey color. Alright, now we're getting dark enough. I think I'm going to go ahead and call it here. We could go darker, making sure the heat is on as low as possible and just keep this up for another few minutes. But I think we are dark enough now where we're doing the world some pretty fine justice. I'm going to use this heat resistant spatula here. I'll get every last bit of this because this is all the base for the entire deal. Every bit of this, every drop of this brings flavor. So now there's heat on the bottom of this pan. So I want to be careful not to let this set on the bottom either, because we're going to get some major burning, and we can't have that. We spent all that time. Can't mess it up now. So I'm going to take this big old bowl of veggies. We're going right in. Back up to medium, medium high. We're sweating veggies. You can see that I'm just mixing all that flour in here. There's a lot of fat in there from the roux itself, so we should be able to sweat these veggies like this. Actually, I said medium-high heat, but honestly, I'm going to come on down to medium-low, actually, maybe closer to medium. I don't want to burn some of the roux that's in there with these veggies now. Not with as long as we spend making it. we let that go about 7 minutes, and then we'll be back. Alright, now we're up above. Looking down at the pot as it cooks. A few minutes gone by. Starting to sweat these veggies down a little bit. There's still got a bit to go. What I'd like to do is go ahead and put in some of my chili paste and some garlic paste. Still making sure I'm stirring constantly. Don't want anything to burn here. When it comes to garlic, I mean, as we probably know by now, I love this stuff and I use a ton of it, but a standard pot like this would probably take 4 or 5 cloves, so I'm going to go pretty heavy on that. Veggies starting to release some liquid. I poured a little bit of beef broth in there because I just still had it open from the other day. Might as well finish it off. Trying to make sure to get all these little corners. I got one little spot over here where I'm sticking a bit. So where I'm starting to stick because I let it go too long, I'll go ahead and pour in some chicken broth right in that spot. Break that up a little bit. Alright. Vegetables are sweat and everything's going well. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put in some chicken broth. So a couple cups of this. Go ahead and turn my heat up to medium-high now because I want to start coming to a simmer. I want it to come to a boil. Make sure this all mixes really well. And then I've got some chicken stock. It's going to go in here. So chicken broth, chicken stock. A couple cups of that. Okay. I want this to come up to a boil. And while it's doing that, let's go with some seasoning. Probably should have seasoned those vegetables while they were cooking in the roux, but it's okay. I missed out. I'll just do it now. So it's a bunch of salt. You always want to be careful. Don't want to add too much salt. So it's okay to taste it at this juncture. So mix it in. Remember that sausage is probably going to have a little salt content to it as well. Okay, didn't overdo it. Then I've got some, also I was going to put in some Creole seasoning. Well, you can do lots of different things for that, but since the Creole seasoning has salt in it too, I really want to be careful not to overdo it with the salt. Then we'll put in a few bay leaves. These we'll have to make sure we fish out later. So now that we've got enough liquidy mess, I don't have to hard churn stir this because I don't want to break these leaves up too much. I'm going to put 3 bay leaves in for now. frozen okra here. Okra has a strange property that when you cook it, it releases some kind of like slime. That slime is one hell of a good thickening agent. So it's used quite frequently to thicken gumbos and other soups and stuff. So 2 of these little bags of this okra. Put it in my green onions and parsley from earlier. They were definitely going to go in for the whole simmering bit, but I didn't want them on that high heat with the sweat. Mix this up pretty good. I'm going to bring the sausage back to the party. Let that flavor the rest and vice versa. Again, I don't want to be too violent. I don't want to break up those bay leaves, but I know they're in there. So before we serve, we got to make sure we take those out. I still have my 2 pounds of shrimp on the side, but that definitely goes in at the end. You overcook shrimp and it'll be rubbery as all hell. So you want to wait on that. Alright, so for a little more liquid, go with some Worcestershire sauce. And also adds a bit of flavor there. And then I grabbed a random bottle of hot sauce. Get a little dab will do you here. Mix all that up. You can see that dark color. Oh man, that's how you know you did it right. The roux, all of that. One of them bay leaves. Again, don't want to crush that. Alright, we have come back after letting the gumbo simmer for a good 50 minutes or so. Things are about where I want them. Last thing to do, put in the shrimp. Let the shrimp cook, come up to temp. And once they are finished, we'll be ready to serve. So, just want to make sure that they lose all their pinkness. This is about 2 pounds of deveined, detailed, peeled shrimp. So I've got this on medium-low. It'll cook 7 to 10 minutes tops. We'll get those shrimp where they need to be. While this was simmering for the last 50 minutes, I did go ahead and put in some rice into the rice steamer. Just some regular old white rice. I added a little Creole seasoning. Finished off the last of the little jug of chicken broth to go as part of the liquid for that. Water is fine. I could have gone non-seasoning, also fine. But I went ahead and spiced it up a little bit. So used the last of the chicken broth and the rest of the water needed to make the rice. And so that's all done steaming. Go ahead and show you the little steamer over here. And that is ready to go. This up a little bit, and all this is perfect. Nice and sticky. That'll make good base to pour the gumbo over. All right, so the bay leaves are out. Now it's time to get a little of this rice Just a good scoop on the bottom. All right, I brought the gumbo pot over a little closer. Let's go ahead and fill this up. Try not to spill too much on the counter. There we have it. Sausage and shrimp gumbo.